Hello, welcome back to the Canonbull Podcast, and today I want to quickly talk about some Legend of Korra, Last Airbender kind of discussions that's been happening recently. So, essentially we're just going to focus on Black Boy and Tigger. Right, Tigger said that the creativeness from Last Airbender were always in their mind trump how bending is depicted in the Legend of Korra. I'm giving you the summary. It's right here. It's on screen. You can just read it, bro. Like, you can read it yourself. Like, I'm not going to do it for you, right? It's on screen. But that said, one of the things that they mentioned that I think we must disagree with is this section. Whereas in Legend of Korra, it was just punching and kicking. We will disagree with it in a bit, but we first want to go into what this Black Boy said, which is, mind you, there was a character born without arms in the Legend of Korra, and that literally made bending an extension of her body. This is important to try and break down as to what my issues with the Legend of Korra actually is in how it depicts bending. Because this character, in my mind, when I first saw her, I was like, this character isn't bending water the way I imagine water bending to feel and look, which is okay. The Legend of Korra takes place after the Last Airbender, so naturally, because of the homogenization of different cultures, different people, these things will naturally develop and grow over time. They will change. We will address that, especially in regards to what Tigger says. But I wanted to talk about this specifically because I don't like this. This feels to me, and somebody I feel does bring it up somewhere. You can see my response over here as well, in case you want to read that. But let's quickly just look at how this character is waterbending, right? Because I don't want to poison the well. I will explain after the fact, right? We're going to stop after she swings out of this cage. Wobloom. And here we go. That's where we will stop. You can go and watch the rest of the clip. These are the important parts that I wanted you to take a look at. I wanted you to see that this character's movements doesn't actually capture any of what I associate with waterbenders, right? Waterbenders, much like earthbenders throughout the course of the story, right? I felt as though they embodied and captured a certain essence of the element that they're trying to bend, which is where I fundamentally disagree with somebody when they say that the modern day bending in Legend of Korra is fine, because the bending art forms to me is like when you do traditional martial arts in kung fu movies, where a character says, this is the monkey style, this is the tiger style, this is the crane style. That's what the bending art forms are to me in the Avatar franchise, right? That the water bending must feel like you are trying to mimic the flow and actions of water. Earth bending, you need to mimic the rigidity, the impact of the earth, right? For air bending, you need to kind of embody that sort of free flowing, that sort of airy lightness of air bending. And then with fire bending, you need to embody this aggressive and destructive kind of art form when you are doing it, right? That's what I look at it as. When you try to do the monkey style, you're supposed to be acting and looking like a monkey, right? You can't say, well, the modern version of the monkey style also takes elements from the fish style. It's like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, what's happening at this point? Like, I don't get it. And this kind of gif that we will look at is what captures a lot of it. Look at how Katara is moving in this gif. There is a lot of push-pull kind of motions, right? Like a wave. The wave comes forward, it pulls back, and then it comes forward again. She leans back, she steps forward, and then she thrusts the water, right? This feels like she's trying to mimic this kind of flow that you kind of get with water bending, right? It also feels as though that if you were to restrict her movements, right? If you were to tie her up, she wouldn't be able to easily water bending, if at all. She would be able to easily water bend, right? Similar to Boomy, who earth bends with his face and stuff like that when he was restrained. This character, on the other hand, doesn't have any respect for that. The way that she is moving there, for example, right? She simply thrusts her arm forward and then the water splashes forward. There isn't any sort of push-pull kind of thing. There's no sort of like step forward, step back. There's nothing. And later on in the fight, similarly, she's mostly just static, right? I'll put this on mute real quick and you can just see she's mostly static. Her body isn't moving at all, except for how you would move if you were to grab someone. Like if Luffy was here, right? And he stretched, grabbed someone and then threw them against the wall, it would be no different. There is no art form in how this person is moving. This person, however, they made it sound nice and poetic. Oh, they made bending an extension of their body. Who cares? What has that got to do with anything, right? Because learning how to bend and learning how to do that well is to mimic the water, to mimic the air. It's not to make the air mimic you or mimic your preferences. That's why certain avatars have issues learning one style over another, because their own personality gets in the way. But if you can just take the art form and then make it an extension of your body, it loses the identity of you, the person, and it loses the identity of the art form itself. Going down, another person showed us how Katara airbends. I'm sorry, Katara? Surely you mean Korra. Fake fan, am I right? Punch, punch, punch. Kick, punch, kick, punch. All of this is just how someone would bend with fire bending, right? There's nothing here that she has to learn in terms of ease or difficulty. It's just all the same stuff. And why this is a problem? Because it then feels like the identity of the thing itself is gone. With Korra, this is fine. She's a prodigy. She learned all of the elements already, right? And some people might hate me saying this, but yes, she's a prodigy. So I'm fine with her basically forcing and she's the avatar, forcing the elements to comport and contour to how she wants to use them, right? I'm okay with that. As long as the lesson to be learned is that for her, she can't always force things to work her way, the way that she wants it to, you know, and that's part of what she had to learn when she learned how to airbend, right? And it's part of her journey in a nutshell, right? Is that she can't always do things her way. She needs to ask for help. She needs to learn. That's all the different things that she needs to go through. That's her journey. But when the rest of the world also embodies this, when, for example, bending becomes a sport and everybody does bending in the similar way, instead of taking the art form and saying that, okay, instead of using this kind of Tai Chi-esque push-pull for water bending, right? When we are doing like the bending, I forget what it's called, right? But the combative bending sports that Korra and the rest of them are doing. Instead of like just doing a push-pull, if there was like a lot more spinning, for example, that's like you pull, then you spin, you take that momentum and immediately shoot the water out, right? For earth bending, a lot of it now is like to try and pull things from the ceiling or pull things up from the earth and directly hit your target. Instead of stomp, lift the boulder, then thrust your fist forward to shoot the boulder at someone, it's just to try and shoot the boulder directly at them from the ground. Or anything else like that is to try and almost optimize how the bending feels and looks already, right? Turn the thing that is familiar and then try and cut corners from that familiarity, right? And some of it could work in terms of, for example, earth bending, that you do an uppercut and then directly transition that uppercut into a hook punch, right? That it's like the uppercut raises the stone and then that hook punch sends the stone flying forward, right? But then it has a curvature. The stone itself flies with like a curve, you know, to just add those kinds of elements so that it kind of feels that the person's movements links in with how the bending actually feels. And that's what I said here. Notice how in the criticism, they felt in Atla, the movements mattered to bending, and in your clip, the chick's movements are irrelevant to her bending or the flow of her attacks. There isn't any footwork that build up from one attack into the next. Everything just happens. I point out footwork for her because she has no arms for us to use as a reference point, right? But if her feet were moving in certain ways to help her bend, if her shoulders were moving, her neck, her head, all these things to try and capture this, I don't have arms, so this is how I bend, compared to someone who did have arms and how they would bend. There is no identity there. She just simply bends because she can. This is why this kind of statements feel so dishonest to me, right? Because it's like you are arguing because you want to argue. You don't care about what this person said. Like, look at what they are saying. It's an extension of one's body. Every bending style had a specific body movement. This person heard extension of body, while this person has no arms. The arms are connected by water to their body. That is then extension of arms and the bending. Therefore, you are wrong. And by the way, again, whereas this feeling like kicking and punching, that's okay if it feels like it still has that core identity, it's built from something. If I can give you another example, right? Imagine each bending form is a different kind of firearm. We say water bending is a pistol, earth bending is a shotgun, air bending is a sniper rifle, and then we say that fire bending is a RPG. You can't fire an RPG the same way you would fire a pistol, right? Those things kind of have different mechanics and different core. But what each of these things are still doing is it's a firearm. It is a weapon meant to fire a projectile of some kind. However, each weapon is modeled differently and each weapon has different pros and cons. Right? That's what each bending form is supposed to be as well, right? That there is rigidity to the earth bending, but it has structure, it is powerful, it has defensive capabilities. There is a lack thereof in air bending, right? So you might find that an airbender traditionally might have trouble learning earth bending, insert Aang. Right? Then you have water bending, which has a sort of more calm kind of vibe to it. It has more of a flow. Think of the two fish that are swimming together in a circle, right? The moon spirit fish that the water spirit fish, I don't know what you want to call them, but there is a push and a pull, right? There are two elements to this bending form. So someone who has this one might have trouble learning something like fire bending, which is inherently aggressive, right? It is destructive in its nature, right? There's no cooperation between one form into the next, right? Like all these different things and personality styles, it feels as though the Legend of Korra said, I don't care about any of these things. I'm going to do it my way. Anyways, I don't know what you guys think. You guys can let me know. I hope you enjoyed. And I've been Mono. Ciao.